How we doing, gamers? Back with the Senzu Bros and the No Counters, No Combos squad. Got me, Matt Manning. We got Tristan Flood and the Senzu Bros, and we got Adrian over from No Counters, No Combos, and this is going to be our Banlist discussion.
And we also got our friend Hudson. He's a dude. He's a bro.
I want to see my fat face.
And he's going to be helping us in this discussion here too. So let's just get right into it. We got the first. We're going to go color by color here, and then we're going to go over maybe a few potential multicolor suspects, and then some leaders that are definitely elephants in the room. So let's start with the color red. Who's got a red card that they think needs to go, needs to be limited, errataed, etc. I know Adrian's got something on his mind.
I'm going to go ahead and start with this one. I think that Furthering Destruction Champa and Hidden Power E Supreme Kai should not be cards. And I have a great argument as why I think that. Furthering Destruction Champa came out in set 1, and it has been a dominant card since set 1, and everybody plays at least one copy in their deck. But my biggest argument is when you set up your game to start, you put 8 cards in your life pile. Furthering Destruction Champa and Hidden Power E Supreme Kai, they force you to play the game with 7 life. So you're already playing the game in a way it's not intended to be played. So I think cards like that shouldn't exist, especially for the simple fact that it takes your calculation out of the game. Like if your opponent's trying to swing for lethal, you can't go to 2 because they're just gonna Champa you. But sometimes the flow of the game, you have to go to 2. Sometimes you have to go to 1. So it's one of those things that you really can't control. It being something that happens in the combo step, there's not a lot of interactions with it. So it's one of those things where, if they have it, you're kind of screwed. If not, then you kind of survive another turn. The argument's going to be like, well, what if they play a big double striker? You can at least see that coming and potentially negate the attack. I just think it's not a fun time, especially if, your opponent dwindles your resources down all the way and they just play like a weenie for 1 energy and then shotgun in and give him double strike, and then that's kind of how you lose. It just feels bad in my opinion, so I think that card should kind of go.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, I originally, when they first announced the wide-reaching ban list and I started seeing a lot of people talk about Champa and considering it, and as well as Kai, I wasn't of that thinking that Kai needed to go, because, doesn't it take skill? Can't you see this coming? Isn't it readable? But that argument starting with 7 life, not being able to go to 2 life is a really, really tough thing, because it takes out a lot of the thought process and how you want to sequence things on your turn, and even defensively. Like, if you feel like maybe that negates in there as that 3rd life or even that 2nd life, it makes you think another time about taking it, because if you're at 2 and you want to take that life and you think that might be the negate that saves you, and they Champa you, you're just done.
Yeah, and to go off that, the set 1 Dragon Ball card game is a lot different than the set, what are we on, 13 Dragon Ball card game? That little energy cost in the corner of battle cards, we were actually paying that.
Doesn't matter anymore.
Now we're...
What a dark and mysterious world that you see.
What's an energy cost?
Now we live in this world where we have these archetypes, and they want you to spend more investment into your deck space for these archetypes, so you're paying less energy for them. We have Dark Broly and King Piccolo that don't pay any energy for them. So I think decks that revolve around this do more for less aspect, Champa could just do way too much right now. And I think that they want to continue this trend. And it's just a great way to shake up the game. Like, you always have to respect it. No one ever goes down to 2 because every deck could run this card.
Exactly.
So. Well said.
Give the fat cat a rest. But I gotta stand up for East Supreme Kai here, okay? He's got a wicked sick mohawk. Do not ban my tiny dwarf god, okay?
He's got the haircut I wanted when I was 7.
Because the haircut while Champa has the body that I currently have.
The dad bod.
The dad bod.
Alright.
I love it.
So other potential red cards I've seen discussed. What about
Card that I know I brought up in some previous discussions, and I know it doesn't have a ton of backing, and I have a fair enough argument for it, is Violent Rays. I personally am of the thought that cards that just say no, I don't know, like, I feel like it completely shuts down some archetypes, and, well, we'll get into things like Dark Broly later, and Red needs a Floodgate. I am not saying that Red does not deserve a good Floodgate, because Violent Rays is phenomenal, but so is Imposing Presence, and I think if they were to touch Violent, if they were to even ban or add a limit, whatever, they should print another Red Floodgate. Like, if that is on the schedule to do, then Red should have another Floodgate printed, and if it doesn't, then, I mean, Violent should be touched. But Violent Rays, to me, can completely change games, and it's there. You can run 4 of it. Like, people talk about Baby Hatch being an annoying card to play against, and I've experienced it a lot, but 4 Violent Rays is essentially, for some decks, 4 Baby Hatches. So I think, looking at it in that way, maybe, but it's a flimsy argument at best. I think it could be, but it could also not.
I think it's a card that will stay, but it's something that a what-if scenario could arise where an archetype could, like, it completely, like, time-walking Dark Broly is a good thing because Dark Broly's Dark Broly, but there could be a future, like, look at Android 21 Violent Predator, like, that didn't see a ton of competitive play, but it got banned to push another set, so I think that could be something to look at in the future.
Yeah.
Alright.
I think with Violent Rays, I think the problem with Violent Rays is it's like a problem but not a problem. Like, yeah, it's a really strong card, but all the other colors in the game have their respective floodgates. It's just one of those things where it's like a necessary evil. You know, Red for a long time was like the redheaded stepchild of Dragon Ball Super. It really wasn't worth it to play Red. And it, you know, over the recent years, like, it's gotten a lot of support. It's gotten a lot of nice little shiny new toys, and I think Violent Rays is fine. It is what it is, you know. It's just one of those things where you just kind of have to, you know, you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Like, if you take Violent Rays away from Red, it's infinitely worse than it is right now. Because then their only floodgates are Imposing Presence and Topo. And I hate to say this, but paying 2 energy for Topo right now is very expensive. So you're kind of limited to Imposing Presence, which is free if you're at 3 life. So it's like one of those things where it's free, but you have to be losing the game essentially. And if your opponent puts big enough battle cards on the board, they can easily just swing through Imposing Presence as many times as they want. So it's like a double-edged sword. I feel like Violent Rays is fine. Leave it alone. It slows down Dark Broly, which is super important. So I think it needs to stay in the game at 4 right now.
Alright.
What's that?
Going on to more popular cards. I've seen people talk.
Alright, I got a big one. This is one that I feel like is a little bit under-discussed. And I don't actually know why. Now, this card does have a pretty significant meta appearance, but I'm talking about King Piccolo, the new ruler.
I was about to say that next.
Hey, nice, man. Alright, I'll let you talk about him real quick then first, because I did technically cut you off.
No, it's good. Keep going. You had a good thought.
Right. King Piccolo, the new ruler, is Overwhelm as a mechanic, represents a lot of different things for a lot of different decks. But the gist of it is you are giving up your drop area space. You're giving up your sparking effects. You're losing the ability to overwhelm consistently. You know, you're giving things up as a resource. Whereas King Piccolo, the new ruler, says, hey, are you doing something that you're likely going to be doing anyways? Here, have a free 20k double strike who your opponent cannot block. And to me, yeah, he gets removed at the end of the turn, but that's such a minor downside to yet another extremely powerful free card that rewards you for doing what you want to do anyways. Now, if he was limited to like a certain archetype, or if he had any sort of restriction on him, I could be singing a different tune. But as it stands, he is completely generic outside of just having a unison card in play with 3 or more markers.
So, something to go off of with that, it's free. And I think we're all going to find this pattern on these cards that we're talking about. Free can be too broken sometimes. Like, free isn't always bad. Like, you know, there's that free dispo that comes out if you have no battle cards with a yellow unison, but nobody plays that because it's not good. But King Piccolo and New Ruler is free, and it's a 20k double striker that can't be blocked. And it's got those 3 positives that are really, really tough to stop when it's combined. And yeah, it goes away, but it's a 20k double striker that you got to deal with.
And other than Overrealm, free cards are usually cards that reward you for investing into the archetype in a deck. So and King Piccolo is rewarding you for investing in a unison, which you're gonna do anyway. So I agree that this is something. I don't know if it'll get banned, but I think it would be a good way to deal with Red's presence of play as much as they can. Oh, they're tapped out, but they're still gonna King Piccolo, fighting against Fate, and they're still extending their turn like crazy. So I think that could be a good way to halt that, because I would say red is probably the most, other than black and red are probably the most represented colors right now, and red is doing free, having a free generic card like that definitely could be, I think, damaging for letting other cards progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's that same thing where, like, you have to create an identity in the game for each color, and I feel like it's crazy that 13 sets in, we're kind of still, you know, in a fringe position when it comes to that. But I feel like, you know, certain colors do certain things really well. Like now with this whole, you know, shift with the way they create cards being archetype focused, you can kind of take the colors and throw them out the window when it comes to the core of the deck. But it all matters now when it comes to like the support colors or the support cards that you're going to play in the deck. They have to tie into the current color that you're playing. So again, like, I'm okay with red being good because it hasn't been good for such a long time. But you know, it's one of those things where I don't think it needs to get hit right now, but it definitely needs to be kept an eye on, because if they do make this huge, you know, shift in the ban list, there's going to be cards that, you know, are going to benefit greatly from the ban list, and there's cards that are going to stay kind of neutral, and there's cards that are going to get worse. So if New Ruler is one of those cards that's just going to skyrocket in how effective it is in game, then it might be something to keep an eye on. But I think it's okay right now. Like, it's fine.
So speaking of other free generic red cards, what do we think about Heartfelt Plea?
It's fine. Just leave it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it myself either.
I think talking about Heartfelt kind of leaks into talking about Dark Broly, because that's the reason we're talking about Heartfelt.
Right.
So Dark.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, before we get too much into Dark Broly, because that's opening up like a whole other discussion, I'm mostly going to talk about Heartfelt Plea and what it costs here. Because I know that's weird. It's a card you play for free that has offering. But traditionally, the downside to the card is it's a 10k combo cost. You're not going to play in any other sense, except for, God forbid, you hardcast it ridiculously late into the game. It's taking up your deck slots, and it's taking up strategic options. Now, some decks, and that's what some decks are why we're talking about it here, but some decks get to do it completely free, playing their regular strategy. Now, I don't know if that's the problem with Heartfelt Plea itself, because the card itself, you know, should be a commitment to get this amazing effect. But right now, a lot of the problem with the card comes from the fact that certain decks like Dark Broly, as we're going to talk about, you know, like, it plays the damn card completely by just doing things it wanted to do anyways. And that means they're not giving up the consistency. They're not giving up anything besides saying, hey, did you open with this card in your hand? Congratulations, now you're going to have an amazing turn.
And it's a card that, after your Awaken turn, is like a pretty much dead card in your hand.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. That's why I'm okay with it, because so much has to go right for you to play it. I think it was scary a little bit, I don't want to get too much into it, but when they released that red Broly in the Toa Ultimate deck, I think it got a little scary with that. But so much has to go right for you to play that card. So I'm okay with it. It's whatever. You barely see it nowadays anyway, so it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on that later when we get to black.
So, another generic... I'll get into the red deck in questions, probably King Piccolo, once we get to decks, but one thing that's not only played in King Piccolo is Piccolo Jr. Descendant of the King. Do we think there's anything wrong with that? Maybe I've seen some people argue that the auto should be once per turn. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really shook enough about this card. I think it's fine.
Which one is that?
It's
The Unison.
The Unison. The 2-drop?
Oh, no. It's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
I personally, I think the only thing that maybe they could do to it, I don't think they will, is make it limit 1 on
The auto?
not in the sense in just the auto, but maybe in the fact that you can only really play 1 per turn, in case you really wanted to spam it, but then you're paying 4 total energy, you're investing 4 total energy to draw 2 cards, which isn't that broken. But the auto, I think maybe they could tone it down a tiny bit, maybe make it KO 10Ks, because 15Ks is a lot, but at the same time, it's really only played in red decks. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a really big support piece for any red deck moving on.
I think this is one of those cases where people see a good card being played in a good deck, and they just want to think about things that should be affected. And I think Descendant of the King is one of those instances where just a lot of hate is bled onto this card because it's the best red Unison right now. Is it the most impactful? Probably not. But is it the best? I'm going to put my foot down and say yes. Piccolo Jr. Descendant of the King does so much for quite a number of decks that really just helps amplify its effectiveness. I think the card is totally fine as is. I could see a restriction on its auto to once per turn, but as it is, hitting this card would basically just be hitting and punishing red for having a good card. And I don't want to play a card game where every single color's good cards just get hit simply for the sin of being good cards.
Alright.
Well said.
Is there any more red cards? Anything else?
I think Drum is something that is talked about as given unique, not as a ban, but giving it unique as an errata, or maybe a limit 1. You can only activate its auto across copies of this card once per turn, because 15k barrier blockers are a lot, and it's free, and you get it just by swinging, which is a lot. I think just give it unique. I agree with that. Solves the problem that a lot of people have in King Piccolo.
Yeah, because not a lot of decks have mass barrier removal, and with Attack of the Demon Clan, I know they only run about 2 copies most decks now, but you can really stack your field with a bunch of barrier blockers, and there's not really a way to deal with a large field of barrier blockers.
Yeah.
Especially since it kind of ruins the flavor they were going for with the card, which is to be a barrier blocker. Because as I see it right now, they don't really spend time blocking with it unless they're going to protect it and make the board even wider.
Yeah.
Also.
Alright, now blue. What do we think about the blue?
I think blue is fine.
Blue, I think, is suffering right now from costs too much syndrome. Everything it wants to do costs too much. That new Blue Unison that it got in set 13 is so good, but it costs 4 energy, so they need to make it to turn 4. But I think that's what they're suffering from right now. I think blue is probably due for some flames support in the next set.
I really do think
those reveals.
There is some good rogue strategies with blue decks like Soul Striker, SS2 Gohan, but really the blue deck that everyone complains about is Baby. And once they're gonna get to turn 4 usually. Unless you're not prepared, or you're another control deck, say you're playing Control King Vegeta, they're gonna get to that turn 4. So I think one card that I don't think it's an issue now because it requires 7 energy, but I could see people, I can understand the sentiment of people complaining about Android 17 just because Baby is going to get to that turn 7 and they have that Boo Unison out now, so they're pretty much, they're just going to win the game off that. I think Baby...
Yeah, I was going to bring up too.
Because I think Baby, it can get to the late game, but that just is... I tap all my energy, game's probably over. So I think limiting the amount of win condition, like, usually Babies out resources and they can tap 5 for Golden Vendor just fine, they can pay 4 for a Booney. I think just like, they tried to give us a neutered Gogeta 7 and it's just like, they gave us Baby right after that. And it just,
and then they gave us the fact that we could use it extremely easily.
Gogeta 7 was such a problem that you didn't feel bad critting life. And, oh, whoop-de-doo, you know, turning the tide gets your hand too. Well, yeah, but you just don't draw until after you play Turning the Tide. So you're going to have an intrinsic massive advantage due to this one card.
And if you played the Boo Unison, you're drawing 2 cards. You also have a double strike swing, your leader swing.
And then it's crit.
30k crit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said. I think Turning the Tide is one of those cards where it's only really used right now in Baby, but unless we get another really big blue control deck, I think that's the next card up. Like, I don't think that'll be hit this time around, because I don't think blue is in a spot where people are going to complain about it, or going to complain if it doesn't get hit. But I think that's the next man up. Like, I think if blue becomes, you know, it starts creeping back up into top 4s, top 2s, then maybe we see it get hit, but right now I think no.
Yeah.
That's been my assessment.
I don't think there's anything else blue other than the suspected Android 17 Turning the Tide. So let's move on to... Oh, you got another one?
That last blue thing is, I could see Sensu Bean getting affected. I personally don't have a problem with Sensu Bean, but the annoying thing about Sensu Bean is that a lot of people put blue in their deck just to run Sensu Bean in it. And Sensu Bean itself is incredibly strong. So I would not be surprised if Sensu Bean someday gets changed to either be restricted to blue leaders or it can only untap blue energy.
Yeah, that makes sense because the main reason Sensu Bean was used back in the day was we have Storm decks, we need to combat Storm with Bean. They're all swinging with a bunch of 15Ks, and right now, all these decks have like great naturally defensive options now, so I don't know if Bean's more of a defensive card now. I think it's more as, because who cares about the 5k now? I mean, I'm sure it comes up, but it doesn't come up as more as I'm going to extend my plays like crazy this turn, so I definitely can see it's a card to look at, but I love the card. I don't want to go, but we'll see what happens.
I heart Bean.
Alright, now the unloved child of the meta, green decks. What are we thinking? Anything?
Ban green, it's bad.
It's just ban green apparently, because, you know, that's what's going to happen to it eventually.
If they hit a green card.
About, you know, like making the jokes about banning green cards, because yeah, I'm going to go out and say this. I do not see any green card being reasonable to ban, or even really limit. Instead, we should talk about why green does not see as much competitive success as other decks and other colors.
Dude, if they hit a green card... No, go ahead, Tristan, sorry.
One reason I think of this is because green has such a powerful toolbox of cards, and they're afraid to give an archetype access to that powerful tool. They have the best super combo, Defending Father Paragus. They have Dormant, which I would say used to be the best floodgate, but is still really powerful, even without Roshi. Best secret rare, green-yellow. Even though it's green-yellow, it's played in green and or yellow decks. And they also have access to cards like Rebrianne, Punishing Passion, and there was the 3-drop of Rosie, Blast Manipulator. And those cards, like, they are very powerful on their own, and if you can splash them into already powerful archetypes, I think the impact they can make is pretty large. So I think that's why Bandai is afraid to give green good, like, I think King Cold is probably, I think it's tier 1, maybe not, maybe it's like tier 2, right below like Mecha, King Piccolo, and Vegex and Dark Broly, but I think they probably could make better green archetypes if these powerful cards weren't in the way, but I really don't think they're an issue.
Let me ask you a question, okay? If they banned Demigra Unison of Sorcery, do you think we would ever see another topping green deck? Green is stitched together by certain extremely powerful cards like Demigra Unison of Sorcery, and I think that's what's limiting its potential to ever actually become like imagine if King Piccolo was green, you know? Like, the power that these colors, like this color could be, is just waiting, and I wonder if it's because the entire color is stitched together by these power cards. If we didn't have those power cards, would they print, you know, like, let's look at the two new green decks. King Cold is functionally almost completely different from every other deck in the game, and then they gave us Lord Chill, which again is extremely different from other decks and is awful. Green, I think, is in such a weird place, almost because it has so many, like, this card is so good, could you imagine if this card was in any other color? And that happens with so many of Green's colors, and it's like, or Green's cards, why? Why is Green basically the Frankenstein's monster of power cards?
I think that's a solid point. I mean, what else is better than turn 1 Demigra Unison of Sorcery in green? I mean, you really can't just like do, like, if they do that turn 1, you really can't do like your typical play lines. You really got to respect that charismatic villain, respect Dormant. So I really think that it is definitely a limiting factor, these powerful cards, into giving a green like a good archetype.
But like, look what I just said. What if Demigra Unison of Sorcery was a red card?
Yeah,
like, I know these are a lot of
the same issue in red.
Yeah.
I think the main problem with green right now is green doesn't have, I mean, maybe you can make the argument for Gotenks, right? But green doesn't really have that archetype-specific deck right now. Yes, we did just get King Cold. You know, the jury's still out on that. But, you know, in the past couple of sets, green hasn't really had its archetype deck. Green has kind of been like the good stuff deck where you just play like a solid leader, whether it's like a Dredge Coup or a Clash Coup or some other coup that's green. You just kind of play it and you just play all the good cards together, and that's it. And I think at the time when they hit Roshi, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now that you're noticing the effects of hitting Roshi, because there's no archetype specificity with green, a card like Roshi getting back power cards like Dormant or Cell's Kamehameha, it kind of puts green in the forefront, and them losing that is why it hasn't really been well represented in the meta. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say about green is, honestly, like, if they hit another green card, green is at risk of not even being a color anymore. Like, it's just support. Like, I personally, I love red-green, but I run them in red decks. I don't run red-green in a green leader anymore. Not only because those good alliance cards are locked to red leaders, that's a whole other issue, but because green leaders just aren't as good right now. I mean, you look at, there's so many good leaders in every other color, and green is just left to rot right now. Maybe the next green deck we get is going to be balls to the wall crazy, but jury's still out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got good talking points. So I'll save the biggest, even though one of the big two offenders are yellow and black. I think black has some more suspect options right now, so we'll start with yellow.
Yeah.
What I think there's one card we can all agree on. It costs 3. It was a consolation prize for losing Bad Ring Laser. It is our boy Swift Retaliation Cooler.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to put the nail in the coffin finally. That's my boy. Me and him go way back. You know, Swift Retaliation Cooler. You know, he's been great, but I think I think the reason Swift Retaliation Cooler gets banned is because of Aggro Sin. If Aggro Sin didn't exist, you could probably make the argument that you don't have to ban Cooler. You could probably just limit it to one. But Aggro Sin having access to Cooler is just kind of like, it's just like a nose goes. Like, it just doesn't feel good. It's just, that deck is very powerful, and to have that counter ability, which there's not a lot of in the game for such little cost, I think that's what puts Yellow over the top right now. But I'm okay with seeing Cooler kind of go away, especially if your opponent does a lot of work to get their pieces and to get their stuff on board and kind of punish you. Like, you having that crutch of Swift Retaliation, you know, it's time for it to go. I'll be sad, you know, I'll say a prayer, you know, hopefully down the road we get something similar, but it definitely should go, in my opinion.
Yeah, so my point with cards like Cooler, these cards that we're going to talk about getting banned, I kind of like to look at 3 restrictions as why or why not a card should be banned. We talked about Champa. You're doing doubles break for 1 for nothing. All you need is 3 yellow energy, and I'm pretty sure it's only specified 1, right? Yeah. Like, the Cooler, all you need is that 1 yellow energy and 2 other ones.
No.
You can't stop me.
3 specified.
Is it 3 specified?
Yeah, it's 3 specified.
So, yeah, so 3 yellow energy in a yellow deck you're playing anyways. Nope, you're not stopping me. Sorry, that counter that you were saving all game for Selzano? Nah, it means nothing.
So,
get that out of here.
Look at...
That's the thing. There's so many free cards that Yellow has access to right now that do massive damage, and they can all be protected by Swift Retaliation Cooler.
Yeah, I mean, Selzano not having the quad strike as part of the 5 energy condition is pretty insane, and we got decks like Aggro Sin, which would not exist if these 2 cards weren't real. And when you look at Aggro Sin, what does everything cost? 1 or no energy? Your most expensive card is Swift Retaliation Cooler. 3 energy is the most you're spending in that deck. So I just think this is a... If we want to continue this trend of archetypes that reward you for investing into it and you're going to do more for less, Swift Retaliation Cooler cannot exist in Yellow, especially with Aggro Sin just being, I guess, a culmination of how cancerous this card can be.
I agree.
Yep, agree.
All right.
You if you want the game to, like, everybody talks about the longevity of the game. If you want the game to survive, you have to eliminate as many problems as possible. And unfortunately, Swift Retaliation Cooler is one of those problems. So it's eventually gonna, at some point, have to go.
Yep.
So the yellow deck that we all know in question, which is, we're seeing these cards at their full potential, is Mecha Frieza. So, like, Vegeta's Final Flash, an amazing card. I like paying 1 for it. I love paying 0 for it even more.
Sure.
Universe 9 Assemble, another crazy thing. And so what do we think about? Is the leader the problem, or do we keep the leader? Do we neuter some of these cards? I feel like Bandai doesn't want to be like, yeah, we messed up with this leader again, guys. Sorry, but I feel like that's what, I don't think they're gonna admit that. I think they're just gonna kill U9 Assemble. But really, I do think Mecha Frieza is the issue. These other yellow cards really. We do see the full potential of these yellow cards, but that's because they're playing in this leader that does these crazy things.
Yeah, it's such a weird dichotomy, because we're stuck between having good cards that are completely fair. Like, Universe 9 Assemble is a good card. It's also, honestly, a fair card in every deck except Mecha Frieza. And the other problem is, like, okay, they can hit all these good yellow cards, but that wounds every other deck that might have used those cards. Whereas, let's say, if they hit Mecha Frieza, then the entire rest of the color gets to survive. There was a problem back during Yu-Gi-Oh! Days, and I hate to bring this up, but there was this ridiculously broken card, Firewall Dragon, and for the longest time, they refused to hit Firewall Dragon because it was the new product thing. They wanted to sell it, you know, it was in the anime and all that stuff. And so they banned everything that Firewall Dragon was affecting. And so you had these entire archetypes getting ripped apart because of this one over-the-top powerful card. And it was not good for the health of the game. And so we're stuck here having this consideration again where it's like, is Mecha Frieza actually a problem? Is Mecha Frieza having access to these yellow cards a problem? Are we going to hit the yellow cards or are we going to hit Frieza? Now, I'm a little bit on the... I'm actually kind of fine with Mecha Frieza at the moment. I do think Universe 9 Assemble plus Mecha Frieza is a little bit too strong, but if you got rid of Universe 9 Assemble, I do not think that would kill Frieza. But it would if you got rid of Universe 9 Assemble, you know, you're killing Bergamo and stuff like that. Now, if they erupt Universe 9 Assemble so that you can still use it in Bergamo decks or even other yellow leaders, you know, that could be interesting. Like if your leader has the universe tag or something like that.
Yeah, so here's my point with Mecha and U9 in general. Adrian brought this up in our local chat. Shout out to the Senzu Bro Cartel. I call it the Band-Aid theory. We've been talking about banning a specific leader that we'll get to in a minute for 8 ban lists almost. It feels like it's been a year. Mecha just came out, and as much as we want to say, oh, I don't want to, like, they don't want to throw their hands up and say they messed up. They messed up. They made a mistake, and as much as I want to see Mecha stay around, because seeing how good it is makes me excited. Like, I don't play yellow, but like that deck looks like an absolute blast to play. But it is too much. U9 Assemble for free is a +4. You're plussing 4 for no energy. That's crazy. I think it just lends itself to, you know, the idea we could take away U9 Assemble, we could take away Final Spirit Cannon, we could take away Flying Nimbus, like we could take away all these great yellow cards, but then you're just chopping down other yellow decks, and eventually even like Sin would become crippled to that at that point, and then you're looking at like crippling an entire color just to keep this one leader kind of alive. And at that point, just get rid of the leader. Like as sad as it is to say, and as simple as I may be making it sound, Mecha is the issue. Playing things for free shouldn't be. It sucks, but it shouldn't be a thing.
I agree with that 100%. You know, if they want to go the whole route of like errata and, you know, just like go errata happy, then I guess fine. Like if that's what they're gonna do, then that's what they're gonna do. But you should just eliminate the problem, which is and is going to continue to be Mecha Frieza. And until they do that, you know, there's nothing else that we could do about it. But if you start putting band-aids on the situation and you start, you know, getting rid of cards like U9 Assemble or Power Over Super Saiyan or Vegeta's Final Flash, you're taking away all of the tools from yellow that make it worth playing. So just get rid of Mecha and open the pool up for more yellow leaders, because right now there's no point of playing anything that's yellow that's not Mecha Frieza, because he just does everything that much better. So I think just get rid of the leader, or maybe I guess errata the leader, or try to reboot it a second time. I have no idea, but they're not going to do anything because it would be a bad look if they did something, so they're probably not going to do anything. They'll probably hit one of the pieces or errata one of the pieces, but I still think, you know, us as a community, our job is to break the game and find like the degenerate combination. So I think if they get rid of U9, we'll just find the next best card. So we'll see what happens.
One other thing,
the leader around are going to have to, every single yellow extra card is going to have to be printed with Mecha Frieza in mind, and I don't want to exist in that world.
Yeah.
It's definitely a game design limiting leader. One other card I was thinking about, so it's been around for a long time. I don't think it needs a ban, but Raiders Warcry, I know it's not that great right now. Like, it feels like decks are not running for them anymore, but we look at this look at this. What is it? That Bardock for one that came in the anniversary box. He has like a limiting factor. You can only play Sage. You can't even play the Unison intended. We have this Champ Pack card that has a limit 1, and it has another condition to playing it. So I think Raiders Warcry is a good example of a card that you could probably put limit 1 on. I think limit 1 is just a great way to deal with slapping on once per turn on all these cards. So I think that could be a good example. Because I don't know about you guys, but I love swinging with my leader, and I got 4 open energy, I got some Sensu Beans. I'm gonna just double Raiders Warcries you, and now I draw 2 cards and got 2 double strike cards on the field. So,
Raiders Warcry is one of those cards that I think will definitely benefit from getting the limit keyword. I think in general we've been probably waiting 3 sets too long for limit in general. They've been trying to like kind of work their way around it with like once per turns and negate this skill for the duration of the turn and negate this skill for the duration of the game. Limit 1 and Limit 2 even is going to be a phenomenal thing for this game, and it is going to help balance things a ton. It's going to let them make a broken thing that you can only do once.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Because
you can just do it once.
When they make something broken, it's going to be on the terms that they want. They know it's broken.
Right.
It's going to work this intended way in a specific archetype or a specific deck. And I think it gives better control over the game design.
Yeah, so to add on to that, like when you start seeing keywords like unique, when you start seeing keywords like limit 1, that means that the designers are paying attention to what they're doing. So I think, you know, Dragon Ball has been notorious for like, oh, do they even playtest the stuff that they make? You know, like Shugesh and stuff like that. And, you know, that whole phrase of, oh, it's going to limit future game design. Well, limit 1 and unique, you know, that's where you start to see the designers pay attention to what they're doing. Same thing with like cards that can be played generically, but if they're played within their specific archetype, they get a little bonus for being played with their archetype. So that's how you can kind of tell that maybe, I don't know if it's a new team that's over there, but they're definitely, their philosophy has changed and they're paying attention more to what they're designing, which is, you know, ultimately going to be better off for the game in the long run.
Yeah, I think the design team has definitely gotten better over the years. I mean, Universe 3 was a huge, was a little bit taken aback, but they've been generally pretty good. But the main culprit of why Universe 3 shouldn't exist, the main issue we have is the color black, and more specifically, the leader Vegex, which John Wick of DVS just keeps coming back. So
yeah, real.
So black, I know we're probably going to go into this great detail. Who wants to start us off? We'll save Vegex for the end, but there is definitely some black cards I think that could be worth considering. So
Demigra SR, bro. Draft Box 6, Demigra SR, just give it the unique tag. That's it.
I think that's a perfect solution to the card. I mean, what other... I think it's one of the best 2 energy investments in the game, because...
Yeah, 100%.
What are you, drawing a card, you're warping something on the field. It's not drop area, it's warp. And then if you get to swing with it, you warp a card from their hand. So it's an insane interaction. If you stick 2 on the board, it's probably GG.
Yeah, and it's Dark Overrealm, so even if you pay 2 to Dark Overrealm, it sticks. You know, if it was Overrealm, where it went away at the end of the turn, I guess that's a little more balanced, but it doesn't. It sticks, and that's enough.
The big thing for me with Demigra, and I'm gonna follow into it. It's played in the 2 best black decks right now. I'm a Gogeta Xeno player. I don't want to admit that it's not the best black deck, but it's not the best black deck. Vegex and Dark Broly are the top 2 black decks, and arguably 2 of the top decks in the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is they do things for 0 to near 0 cost. Demigra is the most expensive card in that deck, in both decks. It costs 2 energy, and you're getting a virtual +3, maybe even more if he stays more than a turn. And if you stick 2, Tristan is absolutely correct. It is near GG. I think giving it unique and maybe even limit, just to even be safe. I don't even know how limit would help if you give it unique, but that card needs to stop doing what it's doing so consistently because it's becoming an issue, and I think stopping it before it gets worse is the right move.
Like, look at the beautiful Gogeta Xeno TP. It's almost the same exact card, except we got Double Strike as a 25k. It also does the warp spot removal, but it's when it swings. That has the unique tag, so I think they realized, alright, we have a black card this busted that stays on the field. It should have the unique tag.
Yeah.
So, getting into another black card I see always complained about, Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. Now, I think this goes back to the Vegex issue, because Vegex is just going to play 4 of it because it helps itself awaken, but it's also, it stops a lot of these good archetypes, but I think it could be a necessary evil, but I think, once again, it goes back to the Vegex issue where they're going to swing with it because it's going to help himself awaken, so I don't know if it should be hit, or if it's just part of the Vegex issue.
So, I foreshadowed this earlier. The Band-Aid problem is Vegex Incarnate. Vegex has been around, again, for almost a year, and it has been on too many ban lists. I mean, U3, to say this entire archetype got banned because of a leader. Look, I get it, it's product that they sell. It is a starter deck. But God, just kill it. Just kill the dead horse, please.
U3 was pretty busted.
Cap it. Just cap it.
Once I saw Universe 3 and Burnhan, I was like, yeah, this
Universe 3 was like a very unique situation because that was a way too busted archetype. But I mean, it's kind of true. I mean, you have this black deck that bursts 5 every single turn, and then you give a bunch of cards that are played for free as long as you have a consistent drop area.
I'm like, even if you don't get good mills in Vegex, you're like, oh, I didn't get good mills this turn, but I got 5 in drop, let me tap 2 for Demigra, or let me plus my Unison, discard a card, play Fighting Against Fate, or Secret Identity, or, you know, it used to feel, I feel like there's never an issue of having bad mills in that deck, because you're going to, I mean, I'm sure in a certain game state, but like, you're just doing so much for free. So one card I don't think should see the light of day again is Supreme Kai of Time, Guardian of Space-Time, the starter card that when it gets played, and if you have 5 cards in your hand, it's a 10k, so you can just shotgun your hand and be like, oh, I have 5 cards now, well, here's 3 Kais. So like, and it comes back with Power Burst. I think like, even if the Vegex leader is banned, I think this card needs to go too.
So, I don't think the card needs to go. It's Vegex is its own problem because it's literally the only black leader that mills 5. Like there's no other burst 5 black leader. Like the good ones, even the trash ones, like there's no burst 5. Like, so why is Vegex a burst 5? Why does he get to draw passively, which passive advantage is huge in Dragon Ball? And then when he awakens, he gets to do the same exact thing, but there's no consequence to milling himself out because he just reshuffles everything back into the deck. So, you know, if you're not playing any Overwhelm in the Vegex deck, which sounds crazy, but on paper, if you're not playing Overwhelm in Vegex, after you recycle your whole deck, you get access to all your super combos again. You get access to basically all your battle cards that are free played except for Vegeta. You get access to your Unison again. You just start the clock over. And back in the Super Shenron days, you know, you get to take a second turn, and that's what wins you the game. Well, now with Vegex, you get to reset the game when your opponent doesn't get to do that. So I think there's a lot of different things to look at with Vegex. But now that they have the new Mass Saiyan reboot leader coming out, they're going to want to push that product. And it's the same thing with Mecha. Like, there's no point of playing another Black Saiyan leader because Vegex just does it better. So in order to push Mass Saiyan, something's going to happen to Vegex. He's either going to have to get banned or errata to burst 3. But I think at that point, just get rid of the guy. He's survived like 16 different ban lists already.
We've had this conversation countless times. And by we, I don't just mean the 4 of us. I mean every community at DPS. Vegex is the epitome of band-aids. Like the package is empty. Just throw it out.
Bandai doesn't like banning things. Like look at that Trunks from set 10. Like, what's the point of having one of that? Unless you're a magician and you're gonna pull that one every game. Like, I don't see the point of that.
Here's what I'm gonna say. If you were bleeding and you just kept bleeding day after day, and you were using packages and packages of you're spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on band-aids for months and years. It's not worth it. Just cut the arm off. Just cut your arm off. Cut Vegex out of the game. It doesn't belong there anymore. As much as like I hate banning stuff, because like I love this game. I've been playing this game since set 2, and it is so much fun. And Vegex needs to go. It's too much. It does too much, and more erratas and more bans for Black is just gonna cripple other stuff unintentionally. And as for Kai, I would say put limit on both of her autos, and she's fine. Put limit 1. You can only play one more turn, and you can only use
on her combos. Her part that would even.
I think that solves her. Because I think she's kind of helpful in some decks that can't really afford hand size.
Yeah.
But yeah, limit her autos and cut Vegex out of the game because he doesn't need to be here anymore. Bye.
So
Bye, Vegex.
I don't think this card should be banned. The new Gogeta Xeno TP, it is really strong, but I think the way that it's all these black decks are just tossing it in, but really it comes to the two big offenders, Dark Broly and Vegex, but really I think something with the fusion pieces could be a little crazy, because like what's every black deck want to run? Probably the best super combo for black, the bottom deck draw one, that's a fusion piece. Black is naturally aggressive, so what do they want to most of their leaders are Black Saiyan, so what do they want to do? They're going to have this 5k Goku that punishes someone for countering. And I mean, I don't really like the idea of punishing someone for countering. I understand it helps with interactivity in the game, but like I don't think this TP should be as splashable as it is. I think it's a great card, but the way that, like, I think you have to have committed space to it, not I'm already running 4 of the super combo, might as well run 4 of this one drop deflect self-awakener punishes my opponent for playing an interactive game. So I think True Fighting Spirit might be a questionable card. I think it's one to keep an eye on, but I think if you want to play this great card in a deck, you have to invest pieces. Like I see people playing Beyond the Limits and SS4 Vegeta thwarting the Dark Empire, and I think that's
it's like, you gotta pass the torch at some point. Think about how many black leaders we got in set 11 and 12 that just weren't played because Vegex did it better. We got the SS4 leader, we got the SS4 Gohan leader, the SS4 Goku leader. Like, those leaders on paper, they're not bad, but they weren't played because Vegex just did it better. And I think it's time to just kind of to move on and let other guys get some spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, that TP, I think, if people are going to complain that hard on it, and Bandai's really worried about it, lock it to the archetype. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Gogeta Xeno player, I swear, unarmed. Just lock it to the archetype, if people are really worried about it. But personally, I think if we're worried about a black deck, it's going to be Vegex, and we're going to get to Dark Broly shortly, because that deck needs to be touched, because it's a problem. It's getting to be a little too much.
I think, like, not a lot of Dark Broly. So with Dark Broly, I see the heartfelt plea being the issue. I don't know if that's really, like, that is definitely part of the reason why the deck could be really powerful, because you're drawing 4 cards on your Awaken turn, because most of the time they're not going to crit you since you're already doing a lot of damage. But I think now they're not running like a huge, like they used to be running 4-4-4 of all these Dark Brolys. Now it's like 2 of the blocker, maybe 3 of the SR, and usually it's always 4 Demon Realm Ravagers. So I think set 11's getting a reprint. That Dark Broly SR is like one of the probably chase cards of that set. I think getting rid of Demon Realm Ravager, like, sometimes it's that card like, oh, my opponent didn't really play any cards this turn, so I'll just make them warp a card from their hand and warp something from the drop area. I think that is probably the best solution, because if you hit the Dark Broly leader, like some people say, oh, make his combo thing once per turn, that just kills the archetype. Like, they have no defense. So I think because if the deck plays for the blocker and for the SR, it still has great options for doing their Warp 6 play from the drop. So I think just getting rid of the 1, it's an uncommon, it's not a big deal. And it does the most for the deck, but Dark Broly's already doing a lot with other 30Ks. They're playing Thwarting the Dark Empire, they're playing Beyond All Limits. They have a lot of other things going on for it that I think that this one card couldn't go. Or the limit doesn't really matter in Dark Broly, but I think it's a card that if you want to do something with Dark Broly, that's the thing to go after.
Yeah. I don't know. So Dark Broly for me has been something that's like sort of a boogeyman. I think it's a major gatekeeper in the format, and it has been since set 11. Mainly because 30Ks take 4 cards to deal with minimum. Like we're talking 4 cards out of your hand that you are either getting rid of them or you are taking that life, because 30K is like the 3rd biggest number in the game. I think the important thing to think about when we're talking about hitting Dark Broly is
Champa.
Yeah, is Champa, and is the fact that these cards are free. I think if you attached a single black energy to those cards, I think it completely balances it. Make them cost something. That's all I'm asking. Like, I don't think that's too much to ask, because they don't spend their energy on anything other than Champa. I don't think, and maybe right, and Thwarting the Dark Empire, right, on these cards that are netting them absurd advantage, and Demigra, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Right, and we're talking about it, Demigra too. Like, I think that just comes back to the fact that Dark Broly is doing too much for too little. Make it cost something. Maybe it's still played, maybe it's not. But at this point, it has been around since set 11, and we're going into set 14, and I'm a little tired of seeing Dark Broly in top lists. It's getting to be too much. Make it cost something. It's free, man.
100%. So, really the biggest thing to hit black decks, I think, is Champa, because it does so much for free. Dark Broly and Vegeks are the worst. Mecha Frieza, getting rid of the leader is definitely the solution, even though I don't think Bandai will do that. I think Bandai's just gonna give it little slaps on the wrist until it's time to go.
Yeah.
But I think we covered everything today.
We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. The only other thing I would be interested in seeing, they did mention they were gonna make a really big shakeup. I wouldn't be surprised if they did like a best of 1 ban list and a best of 3 ban list. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't get rid of Double Strike Kai and Double Strike Champa in best of 3, because you can kind of plan a little bit better with the side deck and everything. But I would get rid of it in best of 1, just because you can't be ready for everything. Like Dragon Ball, especially how diverse the format is right now, you can't be ready for everything. That's why like these sleeper decks do well, because nobody's ready for them. Like nobody was ready for Blue Red Pan. Because nobody played Blue Red Pan.
I love that. That deserves an award.
Which is, as a player base, is great, because you can honestly say, just play whatever the hell you want. Just know what it is that you're trying to do, which is great. But at the same time, you can't prep for everything. It's not a triangle format anymore. There are your top 3 best decks, but on any given day, you could get sauced by a rogue deck, and that's just the life of a TCG, of a card game.
Like,
really.
Look at I think around the set 11 format, or at the end of the set 11, early set 12 format, Mechi Kabora, the Broken Seal, was like the card to have. Some people were even main decking it just because deck strategies are so linear. And look at the card, but if you go to an event where there's not a lot of people playing Dark Broly, God forbid, but that card is definitely a lot worse than it is. So I really think the meta is, like, there is always going to be these decks that you can reliably play, do well, and top with, but I think the meta really is depending of where you are in the country or the world, perhaps. What's in the room? What are people feel like playing that day? Like, I remember starting these webcam events, and everyone was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be so afraid of Majin Vegeta. I better play a control deck." And what was happening? We were seeing tons of baby decks and all these like mid-range control strategies because there was this sentiment that, oh, we got to be ready for Majin Vegeta. And then after that, Majin Vegeta did win. But I just think we have such a good balance in the game. There is some offenders that need to be addressed to, I think, spread it out even more. But overall, I'm not having issues with the game right now. There's definitely some decks that just do too much for free, and we've all addressed that. Vegex, Dark Broly, Mecha Frieza, but I'm enjoying it. Dragon Ball's a great time. Met a lot of cool dudes.
Yeah, man. I think that personally, my biggest offender is going to be Vegex. That's like the number one thing I think needs to be dealt with. We've been band-aiding Vegex for a year, more now, since the start of this block, and we're moving into the next part of this block. And I think if Bandai wants to sell starter decks for this new Mass Saiyan, which I have been witness to thanks to Hudson's testing on day one being absurdly fast, I think that I think Vegex needs to go. Sorry to everyone who paid $16.99 for a starter deck, but I'm sure it'll come to fruition eventually. Don't worry, those cards were worth it.
Or people that paid $100 for a tag team Gohan back during Universe 3. I don't feel bad for those people.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for those people. They deserve that.
They knew that shit was busted.
Sorry, fellas.
Yeah, but other than that, I'd like to shout out Gamer's Edge in Stroudsburg, PA. We play every Saturday at 7 p.m. Our boy Matt here, he's about to move to Tennessee, be a little country boy here, and we're gonna be sending him off this Saturday. So if you want to come join the fun, we're gonna be having a fun time. We're always a great time down here, so definitely stop by if you're around. Drive an hour. Some guy drove 5 hours the other day. Great stuff.
Yeah, the best community I would say in the country. I haven't seen anything that even comes close. I mean, these are the best guys around, and we got two of the best YouTube communities out there, man. No counters, no combos. Senzu Bro Squad. This is the hub of Dragon Ball content.
That's good. Kind words. But yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. For everybody who's watching or who has watched or is watching in the future, definitely give these guys your sub. I definitely give them the stamp of approval. So let's have them enjoy the YouTube success as well.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna be signing off. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. Thank you, No Counters, No Combos, Adrian, for joining us today, and hopefully when we join again, we're in a Vegex-less Borderland, if I can say that right.
Yep. Later, gamers.
Later, gamers.